Right, I'm Tom Moore from the Bartitsu lab, and in this particular session we're going to continue looking at tools the champions use, so what early boxers did to get a competitive edge against their opponents. As I mentioned in the first video, these are from competitive normal boxing. We alter them somewhat for self-defense boxing, but they're a really interesting way to gain those little extra percentage points in the power, damage, disruption and distraction of your enemy. So first of these, we're going to look at George Dixon. And George Dixon, otherwise known as Little Chocolate, he perfected something called the clinch jab. Now obviously this is from an earlier period of boxing where there is more clinch work, there is more grabbing, chancery, pushing, pulling as you strike. And what he did, and again I'm southpaw so I'm going to do it with my right hand, he would launch his jab past his opponent's head, grab the back of their head and then use that to launch up the next shot. So treat it like an accurate jab. Grab the back of the head in the clinch and then decide whether they wanted to strike or push off or wheel off as it's known to cause pain elsewhere. So it's a really good technique to get used to, especially for mixed martial arts, for people that are interested in dirty boxing or people that are interested in boxing for self-defense. So launch out your jab as normal, get your inner forearm in line with your opponent's neck and then sharply draw your elbow in. So you've got that clinch jab. So from here, with me, I'm going to launch in, grab that, and I'm going to pull in. I'm going to pull in for a right hand. The important thing is don't reach out like a grab. Treat it like a jab. It's a really, really useful shot. And the best shots it sets up are as follows. The right cross, as you can imagine, or the left cross for me, but I'm going orthodox here to that. Also the hook works best for the body hook, I would say. So the jab clinch and the body hook. Okay. And if you want to escape from this, the move is called the wheel off. So if I'm grabbing with my right hand and I've done my damage and I want to get gone, I take my left leg in a small circle to wheel off. Okay. So I've got this clinch jab. I've done my shot. Now I'm going to circle my left leg like so and essentially push him away. If I'm doing it from an orthodox position, I've got my clinch jab, I've fired my shot, now my right leg is going to circle off so I can escape backwards or forwards. Okay. Next thing you might want to see is Johnny Dundee's leaping hook. Johnny Dundee's leaping hook is as follows. From a distance which is outside a normal hook range, he does a forward bound. So he lands all of his weight on his lead leg. As he does so, he rips in the hook simultaneously. As soon as the lead leg lands, he rips in that hook. And then he springs himself back using that same lead leg. So he jumps in, the weight's down, he fires that hook and bounces off. The hook should land as the foot lands. So he's springing in from outside a normal hook distance. As he lands, he's firing that hook, then he's springing out. I'll do it from an orthodox position. Again, it's a good way, you can't rely on it all the time, but it's a good way to surprise someone with what feels like an out of range hook. So you bound forward about 18 inches, land on your lead leg, no real weight on your weight on your front leg. Your rear leg is pretty weightless. As soon as that lands, the hook smashes in. As soon as the hook connects, use that same leg which is planted on the ground to spring back. So spring forward, hit, spring back. And you get some really decent power behind it. Just losing my notes here for you. Next thing we're going to look at is Edra Joffre's tip jab. Edra Joffre's tip jab, sorry, essentially comes from leaning the body weight forward. So your rear leg, instead of having it planted or slightly raised, you completely raise the toes of the rear leg, which drops you forward. So he raises the toes of the rear leg as he leans forward to throw the jab. So he's tilting the body unnaturally forward. Many of us get used to driving forward with a jab. Edward Joffre's tip jab, the rear leg stands up on its toes, which I find generates really good power because we're rocking forward. So from an orthodox lead, my right foot goes up on its toes. As my body inclines forward, I throw that jab. It doesn't carry so much body weight behind it, but it does add extra mass. You know, you get people, you can drive in close with a solid jab. Sometimes they're a bit slow. Some people flick out just an arm power jab, but seeing as we're boxing for self-defense, that is not very useful for us. We're not boxing for points or time. The tip jab has the speed of a flick jab, but some of the power of a stepping jab. So the rear foot goes up on its toes, and as you tilt forward, the shot comes out, which is really quite useful, and is quite good for compound jabbing as well. So 1, 2, 3. So the first one is a tip, then I settle down, 1, 2, tip, 1, 2, tip, 1, 2. You can throw whatever you want off that tip jab, but it's quite good at getting over tight guards. The opponent's smaller and they've got a tight guard, you can bounce this over the top. And if you're a follower of Bartitsu or early pugilism, Edmund Price, an early bare knuckle boxer for self-defense, he advocates a similar blow which goes up and over the opponent. So the tip jab, I really like it. The next one we're going to be looking at, let's have a look here. We're going to look at Frank Ern's 2-point feint. Frank Ern's 2-point feint is this. He was a very good feinter, he was very good at tricking people with his technique, but he would throw a double feint, which is really useful. I'm just going to stop my notes blowing away. Benefits of training in the wind. And he would do a 2-part feint, which is 1 shoulder, 2 arms. So he would go 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, actually extend that jab. We get too used to just doing nonchalant arm flaps or shoulder talks when we're doing our feint. This particular guy, Frank Ern, he would go shoulder, forearm, and then set that up for the cross, or shoulder, forearm, hook. But again, it's a good technique to get used to compound feints. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You can really disrupt people. Most people react on the first feint, especially in the early rounds of a fight. If we're looking for boxing for self-defense, I might only need you to react to 1 feint before I can close up and cause some damage. So shoulder, forearm, and then complete. And bear in mind you can mix it up. Shoulder, forearm, here. Shoulder, forearm, there. You can punch with the same arm that's feinting. You can punch with the opposite arm. And you can throw any punch you like. But again, shoulder, forearm, causes really good compound feinting. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can explode up. You can add visceral speed and power to it. But compound feinting, really useful. Another one I'll show you, I'll go back to Edward Joffre and one of the other jabbing techniques which he's got, which is quite useful. So if he's jabbing with his lead arm, which for me is my right hand, what he'll also do is do what's known as a duelist's jab. Okay, so he takes his rear leg and he pivots it in a semicircle, so I end up sideways onto the opponent. Then he extends the long jab. So if you imagine like a gentleman with a pistol, I'm sideways on facing you. So again, he does this, he's got really good coverage. Because I'm really far away, he can't really hit me with much. What he can hit me with, can't hit my jaw, because you're looking at it from this perspective. And I'm really cocked up to fire this rear hand. 1, 2. So he'll go jab and turn, and then turn again. All about that small pivot. So the rear leg does a small circle, so we end up shoulder facing the opponent. As you do that, the jab comes out, and then we can drop something nastier. Okay, give those a bit of a go. So to recap, you've got George Dixon or Little Chocolate's clinch jab. So straight out, clinch and strike, straight out, clinch and uppercut. We've got the leaping hook of Johnny Dundee. So again, we're landing on our front foot, we're exploding with the hook, we're bouncing back. Boom. Boom. Okay. we've got Edra Joffre's tip jab, so leaning forward, our rear leg standing on the toes and tipping that down, and also Edra Joffre's pivoting jab. So we pivot, we turn sideways into that duelist jab, which sets us up nicely for a rear hand, or sets up nicely to be safe, and we can move off from there. And I think that should about cover it from those particular areas. So much to cover in all those different videos. All of my notes are flying all over the garden because it's windy. Hopefully you find some of those useful. See me for the third video.